3, 2, 1, go!
The greatest.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the podcast. You are now tuned into Unlocking Levels with Seal the Source. Thank you once again for tuning in. Yo, if you are watching the video format of this podcast, you're noticing that there's something different going on. I got a little different setup, kind of playing around and experimenting, see what works for me and seeing how the quality turns out. But anyway, in regards to this podcast episode specifically, I wanted to get into several different things. I wanted to talk about embracing your fears, loving your fears, which when you first hear about is something that is not commonly associated when you hear about fears, right? Fears, when that word, at least for me, pops up, it's like something that stops me in my tracks. It's something that indicates like there could be a potential threat or there's something to be scared of, right? But this conversation is really going to be about redirecting and reconfiguring our understanding of fear. And in able to do that, you have to kind of be able to have an increased sense of self-awareness, which is something that I talk about a lot. Be brutally honest with yourself, being able to tell yourself the truth, not lie to yourself in terms of what it is that you're scared of, what it is that you might be fearful of, and just kind of looking at your situation and assessing it so that you know that exactly where you are is all because of you. And if you want to get to another place in life, you're going to have to change some different things. You're going to have to change. In order for things to change, you're going to have to change, basically, is what my mentor, God rest his soul, Jim Rohn, used to say all the time. But with that being said, I really want to get into it. I hope that this setup works out for y'all. I hope that the sound quality comes out good. And if not, we can adjust and we can kind of go back to the same format as before. But as of right now, I really do want to kind of see how this plays out. It's really comfortable for me. I can kind of get in my zone, really talk about what I want to talk about and not feel so restricted. Not even restricted, but just feel a little bit more comfortable. I can really get in my zone, get in my space. But moving on to what we talking about with the episode in terms of loving your fears, embracing your fears, I want to start off by talking about a quote that I heard not too long ago, and it made so much sense to me, especially as I learned more about myself and I took the time to kind of break that down. But I saw something that read, be thankful for your triggers because they point to where you're not free. And before we go any further, the journey and the path towards self-development and higher understanding and becoming your best self, honestly, it's really a path that leads to freedom, that leads to you living in your purpose, being able to get into that flow state more often, being able to just be the very best version of yourself. And please excuse me if there's a little bit of noise in the background. I'm in Hawaii. We do got some birds. We got some noises going on in the background. So that's gonna be a test to kind of see if it works out. But anyway, I do believe that when you know the direction that you want to go in, and in our case, we're talking about personal development, right? Just to go back to what we're talking about. When we're talking about personal development, we are looking towards freedom, independence, away from what it is that we feel is holding us back from living the most fulfilling, most gratifying, and healthiest life aligned with our purpose and our mission. And that can mean a lot of different things. It doesn't necessarily have to just mean financially. It could really just mean you being free in terms of living who you are, living your truth, living your highest, most authentic self. You know what I'm saying? Whoever that is. you got to know yourself in order to determine what that is for you. And when you're talking about being free, as the quote kind of states, again, the quote is, be thankful for your triggers because they point to where you're not free. And when you're working on yourself and you're doing the inner work and you're on this path towards self-development, you're finding areas in your life where you're trying to improve. You're intentionally working on improving, right? And when you do that, you kind of understand like you're gonna hit levels where you plateau, where you feel like, oh, I feel like I'm doing good, but eventually there's always another level. Hence the name Unlocking Levels. We're gonna be unlocking levels, plenty of them. So going back to what we talked about in terms of the triggers pointing to where you're not free, when something triggers a reaction out of you, no matter what it is, somebody could cut you off on the freeway, somebody could, do something to you that you don't agree with, and it triggers some sort of response that you basically relinquish control over. And when you do that, your emotions take over. It triggers some sort of feeling, some sort of reaction out of you, and that points to where you're not free. So when you see that happen, that is exactly the time where you can kind of like catch yourself and say, hey, why did I react that way? It really wasn't that big of a deal, but I reacted just crazily because of something that happened. So what does that point to? And it usually always points to yourself, right? So when you're doing the work, you're doing the inner work, you got to go within to kind of find out like why you do what you do, sometimes unconsciously. And when you have something trigger a response out of you where you do lose control, it could be a good thing if you let it. And I think that when you really allow yourself to kind of explore what it is that triggered that reaction out of you, you can really begin to uncover, what happened in your past or something that you might be holding on to, some sort of traumatic experience that is buried deep inside your subconscious. And when you kind of are able to figure out what it is exactly, then you can kind of, just like in a garden, right? You might see some weeds off in the corner and wonder why flowers don't grow in that specific corner. It's because it's a dead spot. Like there's something over there. It usually just grows weeds, so you're gonna have to uproot the weeds. And this may not be the best example, to be quite honest with you. I'm not a gardener, so I don't really know. But what I'm saying is, like, when you find the root of the problem, you have to take it out at the core. Well, otherwise, it's just gonna continue to rear its ugly head. So when something triggers a response, you can kind of look at that situation when things have calmed down, of course, because in the moment when you're in a response state, when you're in a reactive state, it's really hard to kind of think clear. But when things calm down, you're able to kind of like reevaluate the situation and recognize like where you could have done better. If you're doing the work, if this is something that you're intentionally doing within your own life, as I am, and if you're listening to a podcast like this, I can pretty much say it's safe to say that you are doing the work too. And to connect that with the title of the podcast, which is, embrace your fears, love your fears, even, triggers are like, fears are triggers. What stimulates a fear reaction, a fear response? Like that points to where you're not free, because what that does is it, most oftentimes, at least with me, when I'm fearful of something or I'm in a fearful state, I get all up in my head. I freeze, you know what I'm saying? I stop. It stops me right in my tracks, and I end up missing the moment. I end up missing the opportunity. I end up missing out on the possible experience of something great because of my fear. I let it paralyze me, and clearly I'm not free if I'm being controlled by my fears. So similar to the triggers pointing to where you're not free, your fears can also indicate areas of improvement where you can work on, where you can start searching within yourself, like, why am I fearful of this? Let's get reflective. Let's get introspective on that and try to figure out why am I scared of heights? Or why am I scared to leave the house? Or why am I scared to get on the road? Whatever the case may be, whatever you're scared of, you got to start asking yourself these questions, like, to uncover the real reason. That way, eventually, with enough time, with enough work, enough progress, you're going to see that you can rise above your fears. Your fears don't always have to dictate everything that you do in life. And with that being said, it's not easy work. 100%, we know this. I've said this before, you obviously know this. But in order to unlock new levels, you got to do the work. And it's not always going to be easy. So keep that in mind always. And with fears, something I'm working on in particular is kind of like when I do get in a fearful state, I gotta act on it rather than kind of sit and think about it, because that thinking leads to worrying, overanalyzation, and it leads to paralysis by overanalysis. And meaning it stops you in your tracks. Like, I'll give you a specific example. When I was at the beach in Waimea Beach, on the north shore of Oahu not long ago, I finally jumped off this cliff into the water, which a lot of people do. It's very common in the area to do cliff diving and things of that nature. But for the longest time, fear of heights stopped me in my tracks every time. It's still something I deal with to this day. So all the times I went to this beach, beautiful beach. If you haven't gone to Waimea Beach in North Shore, I suggest you do. If you get a chance to, please make that happen. You'll love it. It's a beautiful beach. And that rock, it's a fun rock to jump off of. But I would have never known because I was so scared of it. All the times I went to that beach, I avoided that rock like the plague. I just would not go up there. I wouldn't even entertain the idea of going up there because I knew, or at that moment in my life, I thought in my mind that if I got up there, I would just freeze and I would just end up turning around, and I wanted to save myself the embarrassment. But something I'm working through is learning to kind of just take that fear, look at it for what it is, not overanalyze it, and just go. And just make the decision and go. So what I did, the most recent time I was over there, I thought about it for a second. I wasn't even thinking about it going onto the beach, but when I got to the beach and I looked at it, I saw people jumping. It was such a beautiful day. I was like, you know what? As part of my practice of rising above my fears and meeting fears in my life and embracing my fears and loving my fears, I'm gonna jump this rock. I made that decision. I said, I'm gonna jump this rock. Didn't take long. I just said, I'm gonna jump this rock. And sooner or later, when the time was right, when it felt right to me, I just made my way towards that rock. And guess what? As I got closer to that rock, I got scared. I'm not gonna lie. Looking at that rock from the ground, it doesn't look as intimidating, but then you get closer to it, it's high. And then you're climbing up the rock, it's getting higher and higher. And then when you're looking over the ledge, oh man, it's high. Especially me, because I'm a tall dude, so I'm looking over the ledge like, oh my God, that looks crazy. And you're seeing people do it. You're also seeing people freeze up and hesitate. And that's the worst thing you want to do, is like hesitate. You got to make the decision and just go for it. And I seen people freeze up, and I wanted to jump as soon as I got up to the top. I'm not gonna lie to you, but what happened was some people were kind of taking a little bit longer to jump, understandably so, not judging whatsoever. But I knew that if I was gonna stand up there for too long, I was gonna end up backing off. And I just wanted to kind of like, in a way, get it over with. But what ended up happening was I ended up having to kind of stay up there for an extra couple minutes, which allowed me to kind of get in my mind and fucking think about it. And I almost was like, oh my God, I'm not gonna do this, because I looked down. You know how they say, don't look down, just do it. Like, I looked down, I made the mistake, but you know what? I don't even think it was a mistake, to be real with you, because I wanted to know where I was landing. I knew where I was going, I knew what I wanted to do because I already decided. but I wanted to make sure I knew where I was landing, because if not, I would have hurt myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to be properly prepared to kind of be able to do some stuff like that. Just because you're in a fearful state doesn't mean that you can't do the proper preparation in your own mind or whatever you need to do to kind of get yourself acclimated to a situation where you are meeting your fears and you're kind of getting to know those fears on another level, you know what I'm saying, and rising above them at the end of the day. So for me personally, I was up there and this wave of like nervousness kind of like rushed over me. I'm not gonna lie to you, I was a little scared, but ultimately I said fuck it, and I ran off that cliff and I jumped and I landed in the water and I popped up, and I was like so happy. It was so fun. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was scary for sure. It was certainly scary, but it was so fun. I mean, it was an experience like I've never had before, because I don't even like roller coasters. I rode roller coasters before and things of that nature, but never really quite enjoyed them. But it is more so about me conquering my fears. And I love my fears because they indicate where I wasn't free. And had I not understood that that fear was preventing me from experiencing something so fun, then I probably would have never really even appreciated just how much a moment like that meant to me. So jumping off that cliff was very rewarding. It was a great experience. It was something I'll remember forever. Clearly I'm telling the story over here, so you know, I'm sharing that with everybody. And for me, it was just an amazing memory that now I can have. And I know that if I set my mind to it, if I make the decision, whatever fear I face, I can meet that fear, understand that fear, and then rise above it. You know what I'm saying? And act in spite of fear anyway. And before moving on any forward, we should differentiate fear versus actual threats. So there's actual threats, right? Like, don't get it twisted. There's every time you set foot outside the door, even just being alive, there's a chance that something can harm you. Even right here as I'm sitting here, you know, electrical wiring can go out, something can fall over, earthquake can happen, all this different stuff. And I'm not saying that to scare you even more. I'm saying that to just kind of accept reality as it is. What is life without risks? You know what I'm saying? Like, the risk and like the and understanding that like we are only here for a certain amount of time and anything can happen, and to just kind of allow ourselves to get paralyzed by fear, it's just not the way to go. So going back to it, there's actual threats, right? So be smart about that. Don't do something that you feel like, you know, you're actually going to put yourself in a place of harm. Do your work, do your research, prepare yourself, get yourself ready for situations and moments where you are meeting your fear, right? And then there's fears. Fears oftentimes are defense mechanisms. They're here for us to protect us, right? But sometimes it could overprotect us, and it could really just paralyze us. It could stunt us to the point where we don't do nothing, and we miss the opportunity, we miss the potentiality for having one of the greatest experiences you could ever have. So you got to know the difference between the two. And one thing I noticed as I've kind of been going through this practice of rising above my fears and things of that nature, I'm noticing that after I do something that I've been fearful of, I realized it was not nearly as bad as I thought, as my mind made it up to be. And it's crazy because what that does is it kind of like unveils this like cloak, right? Like it just like moves the cloak out of the way, and it helps you kind of realize like, yo man, what you want is literally exactly on the other side of that fear. You know, I struggle sometimes, or something that I'm working on more and more every day is kind of configuring my mind to not be, it's not even being scared of failure. It's about, what if I'm successful? Then what happens? My whole life has to change. You know what I'm saying? What if I actually get what I want? I have to leave my comfort zone. I have to do something different than I was very accustomed to doing. You know what I'm saying? Getting the kind of mediocre results and whatnot. But if you actually get what you wish for, what you really want, oftentimes it's going to require a change out of you. It's going to require you to kind of like readjust yourself and again separate yourself from that comfort zone. So that's a scary thing in itself, you know what I'm saying? Like, failure is all part of the process. You know what I'm saying? That fear of failure stunts too many of us. We all got something to give, and hopefully what you get out of this episode is that like your fears don't have to be what holds you back any longer. What it could do is be a guide for you to go in that direction, to explore why you're fearful of something. What on the other side of that fear can give you what you're looking for. And when you kind of do that for yourself and you go through your own introspective journey to try to find out and uncover the answers that only suit you, that's aligned with your mission and your purpose and your reason for being, then you will see all the benefits from it. And again, it's going to be very difficult in the beginning. Like, I'm very much in the process right now of learning how to take my fears for what they are and let that be a guide for me, as I just told you. But I promise you, as you go along, just like anything, you string together some momentum, you start to become just numb. Not necessarily numb, but like you start to become better at it. You know what I'm saying? It becomes more natural. And you start to realize when fear kind of rises within you, you're like, oh, okay, fear, like I know how to deal with you. Like, you don't let it completely just stunt any of your progress. You feel what I'm saying? And it's important that you do that work for yourself, because I'm doing that for myself, and I hope that as I'm doing that, more other people are doing that, and you get around people that are doing that too, because that's going to influence you, that's going to encourage you. And it's important if you want to grow, and if you want to live that fulfilling life, and if you want to be in alignment with your mission and your purpose, you're going to have to change your relationship to fear. So like the episode says, love your fears, love your triggers, because they point to where you're not free. And on this road to journey to self-improvement and to being our highest selves and our best selves, there's always new levels to unlock. With that being said, if you guys like this episode, please like, comment, subscribe, share, put the notifications on, all that, and do everything you can to support the podcast. I definitely want to reach out and help as many people as I can by being transparent with my story and inspire as many people as I can. So please, with your help, it can be done. I can reach as many people as the internet allows me to. So, and that's infinite. But I thank you so much for supporting the podcast, supporting the journey. Unlocking Levels is on episode 3, I believe now. So it's crazy. We're underway. I got a lot of stuff cooking. If you've been following the channel, there's a lot of cool stuff that I've been kind of sharing. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm always going to stay excited. And the best is yet to come, y'all. Peace and love.